Jamie,
Green
welcome.
Room.
Welcome to the only architecture podcast that is live streamed on Twitch and YouTube.
Yes. Yes.
I
indeed.
did remember to think of that while driving from class yesterday. First day of the semester, winter semester started, and I'm like, wait a second, we're the only podcast that because I put it in the syllabus. I'm sure there might be a student or two watching.
That's good. That's good. I mean,
put it in the syllabus.
Sometimes sometimes you have to do a little self-promotion.
I had to sugarcoat the syllabus a little bit because they changed the attendance policy, which I think made, or absence policy, which I think made some students a little cranky. They're reserving judgment until later. I know it.
It's a new year, folks. It's a new year, new rules.
2025. Doctor's notes. Dog ate my homework. Ain't gonna fly no more.
Yeah, I saw a post. I don't know. It might have been an Instagram post or something, or Threads, or I added a Blue Sky account. I don't know why. Just cause.
Are you sure you don't know why?
But it made me smirk. But it was like, someone was sort of saying about like, oh, it's 2025. I want to use the return policy. I've had this for 14 days, and I'm just not interested in 2025. After all,
today is the 2-week window.
Yeah, and I was like, that's pretty clever. I was like, I liked that. I needed that. So,
but does that person really want another go back to 2024?
I'm not sure that all. Yeah, that's.
I don't think it's much of a.
Can we pick a different
highlight.
year? Can we just go? Can we just find another highlight year and go there for a little bit?
Yeah, like 1970s, late 70s, early, mid to mid 80s.
Just riding your bike.
Yeah.
Around the neighborhood.
Or wandering around the woods, my backyard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Before ticks were a big concern.
Yeah, because like when you're a kid, do you remember that? I don't remember that being like as like
walk right out of the backyard and into this hillside,
right?
But which is kind of woodsy, and just disappear for a while.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I lived in
bushwhack, I guess you would call it,
the Bay Area, and we had foothills around us, and it'd be like, okay, see you later, gonna go, and just like get on your bike and just go to the edge of the neighborhood, and then like wander into the the foothills,
yeah, and then go to the convenience store and steal baseball cards from
not steal. There was no stealing. Like it was,
I'm kidding. Hypothetically,
yeah.
Topps baseball cards.
Big League Chew,
Topps baseball cards, very inexpensive.
Yeah.
You had in your recent sketches, you have a Denny's mug.
I did have my Denny's mug in there,
and
because we had been talking about it, so I just wanted to slide that in there.
Just I didn't bring it up last week, and I love the Denny's mug. So growing up, we didn't, in Connecticut, the part of Connecticut where we grew up, we didn't really have a Denny's, because on the East Coast, as we were talking about this last, diner culture. Mm-hmm. So it was more mom and pop diners, not chains like a Denny's. So, but Denny's had the Grand Slam breakfast. You remember
this? Yes.
And so the one year they had 4 cards. I think Frank Thomas, Don Mattingly, probably like Canseco or Barry Bonds, somewhere in. I don't know if it would be.
No, Bonds would be later.
Not Barry. Yeah. Some of the big hitters, right? The popular, home run guys. And me and Charlie begged our dad to take us to find a Denny's and take us to get because they had hologram, special edition hologram baseball cards.
So does this story end up like, because it's Connecticut, did you have to drive to another state?
No, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't remember where we went. My brother, Charlie might remember, but I don't think it was too terribly out of the way. But my dad did figure it out and find a location, and I got the Don Mattingly card, which was, that was the one I wanted. Hologram. Nowadays, to try and connect, right, like Pokemon cards, right, and stuff like that, genre, like collecting.
Oh no,
cards,
there's apparently like
a whole industry still.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, all that stuff.
But it was baseball cards back in the day.
Oh, I think the sports cards are probably still in there, but I think that there's plenty of others. So,
and I bet you, since my mom is not one to throw anything away from our childhood, I think she still has. And I put it in this cool, acrylic shell. So it's like I had it on my shelf. The things.
So is there like a shrine? Is there a shrine at Mom's for?
No, at the moment it's probably in a box somewhere.
Oh, okay.
But I had it in a little acrylic case, and
And when I say shrine, I say that completely affectionately, in the sense of that there's this room that your mother has that, like, both boys,
yeah,
it's curated,
yeah,
for your visits.
Yeah, she there's a certain amount of that, yeah, for sure. With we call it hashtag Gloria, there's a certain, she has her own way of things.
That's okay. That's okay. That's what parents do. So,
anywho, I went on this diatribe about nostalgic things, I suppose, but I wonder what that card's worth. I could,
I said,
probably look it up.
There's a thing called the internet. And
I'll find it. All right, since we're in the green room,
we're in the green room. We can take a minute. Take a journey with us, folks. As
Don
Kurt, we all now realize Kurt has a dual monitor setup, because he's like looking off to that, his right, my left, your left.
Oh, here we go.
Trying to spell it.
1991 is that the right? Upper Deck Denny's Grand Slam card. Oh yeah, I think that's it. $2.25.
There you go.
$2.95. Oh wait, here's one that's worth $50. I think it's a condition thing. Man, some of these look terrible. Like the hologram is totally faded.
Like, what did you do to this? You spilled your coffee on it at Denny's on your way out the door.
Yeah, it looks like trash. Like it's like faded. I bet the technology on hologram cards. Maybe we need to type in mint, because I bet you mine's in mint condition.
Yeah, what's hashtag Gloria?
50. I guess we're looking at $50 here. I guess I'm not retiring.
No.
Early.
But you could gift yourself something with that, Amazon card you were showing me earlier. Just start combining, pooling.
Sell my Don Mattingly card, and
I'm not trying to encourage sale of shrine items, but
first one would have to unearth the item from the box. I don't know if it's out and about these days, but it's been a while since I've seen Mom's. But anywho, seems Mom's place. But all right. Well, what about you? Is there a shrine of sorts? You kind of have a lot of your stuff with you.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's my mother. Mom at some point decided that um, things needed to leave the house, and so there was like a
Ah.
purge
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
of sorts. Um, so, but it's like there's still like a slightly curated, experience where you go and um, and you're like, okay, there's like nuggets of things, but they also have a grandchild, and so that's where the
Oh yeah.
real
Right. The value. The
like
value.
preciousness, yes, yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
um, all things
You've served
associated
your
with.
purpose,
Yeah,
Jamie.
I have it's yeah, exactly. I've like I created the grandchild or helped create the
It
grandchild,
is
and
now that is all.
yeah. So here's your
Yeah.
box of stuff. Take it.
You are the Don Mattingly card that's a little faded and
Yeah,
unloved.
yeah. Do with what this
Two
box
dollars and
contains
ninety
as
five
you will.
cents.
Yeah,
$2.95.
near mint. So
Near mint. It's a little frayed on the edges.
yeah.
Oh, we'll put you in a lucite case. Turn you
Hmm.
into a little flat paper architect
Yeah.
instead of paper architecture. How do you like that? Oh man, should we kick it into episode time?
Yeah, I mean, because
The
we
show,
just,
show time?
for those who like, went down this memory lane with us, we do have a penchant on the podcast, especially in the live portion. Oh, wait a minute, all of it's live.
All live.
Um, that sometimes we do talk about the sports ball. So
And today was no exception.
yes,
I think it was a worthwhile
oh yeah,
excursion down into Denny's Grand Slam breakfast hologram baseball cards.
yeah. Who else can give you that?
I yeah. The fun part if I found it good and then flashed it in front of my students, show them that check this thing out,
Holograms.
holograms. This is what we call hologram.
Right.
All right, I gotta change gears. All right, I will hit the
Cue it up.
into the intro. Well, hey Jamie, how you
Hey,
doing?
good.
Welcome back to the show.
Welcome back to the new year.
The
Some
new
people
year.
might be looking at their return policy and finding their receipts, but
Today is the deadline.
yeah, 14 days, folks.
Keep the receipts.
Yep. I've
Yeah.
got a question for you. When we do our intro,
Mhm.
that your brother and then you and I have crafted with all of our photos and things. There's a part in the music about 2/3 of the way through where I want to say, and I'm not saying I'm being critical, but I want to say that my ear hears the beat change.
Oh, like the tempo.
Yeah,
I think it sort of slows down.
it slows down. Like
Yeah,
there's a spot,
I'll have to ask Charlie about that.
yeah, you have to ask. Well, I mean, I know that you did mention that he did get some new toys,
Well, I
and
know, which
we have
he
been
owes us.
talking. Yeah,
We've gotten what do you call them? First drafts,
right.
sketches of his
Demo tapes,
musical sketches demo.
demo tapes, even. Yeah,
Um, but now we need to kick that back into high gear. I think we spent all of 2024 in demo land. So
yeah,
now we need new music 2025 with all of his fancy dials and buttons and things that toys. I don't want to call them toy.
Don't call them toys. Yeah, I shouldn't have said that.
It was not I don't think it was an inexpensive object.
No, yeah, it's
But
part of his
anywho,
craft. Yes, and we
we should
appreciate it.
ask him about
Yeah.
the I did notice that too. I wonder because it's I mean, I'm gonna sound dumb because I mean it's all synthesizer, digital,
Right.
digitally created, and it has a lot of buttons and little and I wonder if it was intentional or unintentional.
Well, I
You know?
think I should have prefaced by saying it that way because that was sort of, I think I'm along the same lines as you. I'm kind of curious from a creative to creative. If, but like, I think it's a good time. And maybe Charlie would like to, maybe he could do an unveiling and bring some of the music with him and
Oh yeah,
come back on. I mean, it's only been like
5 years, 6 years.
6 years since we've had him on, right?
Well, that'd be cool. Yeah, and we we do a lot of show and tell of coffee and pens and things like that. But yeah, tools of the trade, let's call it, and then we can bring Charlie in. That's good reminder. So speaking of show and tell, what's in the mug?
Well, I did mention in the last episode that I did get the new one, the Kick Ass blend from the Kicking Horse,
Mm-hmm.
with the little lime green donkey logo
Mm-hmm.
on the black bag, and yeah, that's still in rotation right now. So, and quite good.
I too. Then since it's only been a week since we last spoke, I'm still working through our coffee sketch podcast coffee from Rootless. So near the end though, so now we got to make a decision at the store. So
Or your local roaster.
or roastation. So what's in the roastation?
Mm,
The next in the roastation?
I don't know.
I'm really trying that one out. Yeah, we'll have to
Yeah,
keep working.
you can workshop that some more.
All right. So, well,
So new year,
yeah.
and you were starting to tell me in the green room about your drive home, and you were thinking about things, and you realized something about this podcast, but also that it's like you're driving home from effectively the first or second day of school.
Oh yeah. Yep. Today is yesterday was the first day, being Monday, right? We start the week on a Monday. Some schools start on different days, but anyway, we won't go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, although I missed my window, I should have. I think what I'll be adding to our introductions from now on, at least for a while, a reminder to people that at the moment, until people catch on, we are the only architecture podcast that live streams on YouTube and Twitch, and then generate our edited, you know, curated down episode, for audio. And actually, the game plan is to leverage the tools that I have for editing and try and create some shorter. We had a recommendation from a chatter, a live chat, actually one of my students, that some highlight reels, short, short. I wouldn't. I'm not. We're not talking about 30 seconds or a minute, but condensed versions, digests of the podcast that I think we can also repost onto YouTube, uh, and then share that out. So that's
We have talked about it. We have tried it, and then
the thing that I was
life kind of gets in the way sometimes. But yeah,
that I was stuck on, and you can tell me definitively now, is do I go back
ooh,
to to our earliest video recorded episode, which is somewhere in the high 70s or 80s, like into the 80s. So we're talking over 100 or almost 100 episodes ago.
Mm-hmm.
Do I go back to that file and then start these things, or do I start from, say, now, moving forward?
Well,
You know,
my personal take is it's not that linear. And
so
what I mean, yeah, is that you and I have not necessarily favorite episodes, but we have favorite things that we've talked about.
yeah,
And we've had some really good segments, both with people that we've interviewed, but also just really good segments on art and architecture and process and coffee too. Um, but yeah, I think we could probably generate a list of 10 favorite episodes to go back to, and and I would imagine I would imagine that those are not in any way, shape, or form sequential. That they might be episode 92, and then episode 112, and then episode 154,
sure.
and so
Which,
on.
so in which case they don't, yeah, we don't have to. It doesn't be so linear. Okay.
Right, right.
Well, that takes a lot of pressure off too.
See,
Then I don't
just
have to.
that the stress just released right out of Kurt's
Yeah,
body.
yeah. Right off the top of my head, where all the hair used to be.
Season 1, Kurt had hair.
I had some. Oh, So, well, well, I don't know if I can mention it yet. I had a Zoom call. Well, I don't know. If you want to be specific, Microsoft Teams call with some good old friends of ours, Brad Benjamin and Corey Claiborne
Oh,
from the Young Architects Forum days, who are putting together a session for AI National Conference on starting your own firm, and they asked me to participate. So maybe this is my way to not step in it too much, but maybe people should keep an eye out in June in Boston when AI 25 conference comes around. Just saying, maybe.
we have gone to conferences in the past.
Hopefully that doesn't, the AI National doesn't just shut me all down, right?
No.
Once they hear that. No, that's fine. We're yeah, anywho. So I was excited, Corey, Corey, you remember Corey and how exuberant he is and
Oh yeah, well, and I know that Brad asked you to do
positive.
it. I was there when he was like,
Oh yeah. Oh,
you know,
yeah, you were there behind the scenes,
yeah, I was
so to speak,
might have been,
instigating. But
yeah.
it was fun to talk with Corey.
No, that's fun.
He's
Yeah,
always so upbeat and optimistic,
no,
enthusiastic.
that
So,
should be fun. Hopefully you
although
guys.
Corey's job, he's not going to be on it. I think he must be on the committee
Mm,
developing the conference, because he kept saying
strong.
we as in, coordinating we. Anywho,
Is that like the Queen's we? Like we just sort of like,
is there a Queen's we?
I don't know if there's a Queen's we,
Well, as a royal we,
a royal we.
a
Like
royal we. Anywho,
yeah,
I just sorry for the random tangent in between and after
it's
coffee talk,
it's the coffee talk.
all that stuff.
It's the
So
catch up.
yeah, yeah, a little bit of the catch up banter. So should we talk about sketches though?
I think we should. And
Because they're kind of, there's an interesting little twist that we have creativity wise, but the subject matter is kind of a downbeat
yeah,
subject and current events. So anyway, I guess let me turn the screen on and then we can kind of go from there. Oh, I got to zoom into start here. So Well, I guess do you want to intro the sketch and the subject matter while we're at it?
Um, well, I was going to say, that um, I don't know about introing it, but it's just sort of, I think, so, we were joking about, the beginning of 2025 and, how it's been, like, can we, rain check this? Because, yeah, I think, it's the year has started with, arguably the one of the worst, or at least maybe not. I know that there has been lots of natural disasters, equally large and big, but each one seems to get bigger and bigger. And I think a lot of estimates that I'm hearing right now is that this might be the most expensive, um, in terms of overall, um, cleanup and recovery. And I think in all honesty too is that it's not just because of, um, uh, when you have tornado damage and hurricane damage and things like that, all devastating. Um, but the sometimes the environmental cleanup for some of those instances is a little bit different.
uh,
And so I
right.
think one of the challenges here is because there's been, so many fires associated with, the devastation in California that, I think that's put a wrinkle on this one in a different way. Um, but all that to say is
Right. Yeah.
that it's as we're talking about it and recording tonight, even, I think it's not done. I mean the fires are still going. You've got first responders and, um, you know firefighters from other states and other countries, even Canada and Mexico, I believe, have sent, um, responders to it as
Hmm.
well. So this is massive. It's and I don't know that area of LA. You lived there for a long time, but uh, what I do understand of it, and I mean I've been there many times, but uh, the scale of it just is so huge.
Oh yeah.
And having lived in California, I kind of understand the terrain, and even growing up there as a kid, um, it always was about the big one. Everybody always was talking about earthquakes and sort
Yeah.
of resilience response related to earthquakes, which of course fires and other things are associated with that too. And in utter devastation, and and loss of life, and properties, and all the other thing, infrastructure. But I think this is just something that, it's really really a scale and a presence that's really hard to imagine. Um, that these imagine hurricane force winds, with
Yeah.
fires,
Right. Yeah.
that
Blowing flames.
blowing flames and embers, so that it's
Yeah.
not just
100 mile an hour.
yeah. Well, and I think the thing that I've tried to wrap my head around a little bit in kind of, and you can only watch so much of the news. It's hard, to, but it's that and you hear about this when you have large fires, is that the embers will blow, and then they will blow, like, in some cases miles, or hundreds of
Mhm.
yards or whatever, and then ignite something else, so that then now you've got sort of two different fire sources.
Yeah.
And now the people who are fighting it, they've got sort of almost two different lines of defense that they're having to create, or
Yeah.
two fronts even.
Hmm.
And but when you talk about hurricane force, I mean, that's just at a different scale. And
Yeah.
I just it's yeah, just it's gut wrenching, it's heart wrenching, to think about.
So the sketch that you produced is kind of I think I appreciate unsolicited. However, I did kind of prompt to use a little hint word. I prompted you a little bit by sending you an article about some architecture in LA that is under risk or has already burned. So this is Ray Cappy's designed Keeler house, right? Or
That's
Keller,
right.
like
Hmm.
Keeler, right?
Hmm.
Um, and what one of his nicest, well, I don't know how to you can't say one of his nicest, but I mean the angle that you captured, the photograph. I mean, it's one of, I think it represents Ray Cappy's, I think, super underrated or super sort of sleeper, if to use a certain term,
Yeah.
sleeper mid-century architect. I did actually meet him once,
I was hoping, that you maybe
and
had some
I was
story. Yeah.
technically in a job interview, and he walked over, like, because he had started this prefab design and build company in the early 2000s, and I was interviewing with his business partner that he set up the company with, and then he was there. We were actually meeting at the job site, which was kind of makes sense, right? You kind of talk about the project and the design process and the product and the building, and then Ray walks over and sits down. The thing is that he's always, I mean, I only met him, so I sat down with him, talked about, I didn't get the job, unfortunately. Long story short, but it was really nice. I was a little nervous, right? I mean, I was probably way more nervous than I can remember nowadays. I mean, that was a long time ago, but um, he was very unassuming and non, very, low. I guess nowadays you'd say low key, but no ego. He was just interested in, like, if I could meet their production speeds and demands, and you know how quickly they were trying to kind of grow from scratch, really. But anyway, so I got to meet him probably about 20 years ago now,
Right.
and in that moment, and then um continue to be a fan. I mean, being studying in LA, right? We talk about Cappy's work a lot, and
Right.
he was a big he was one of the founding members of SCI-Arc, I believe, the
That's
Southern
correct.
California Institute of Architects. So he and a few others, including people like Tom Main and Michael Rotundi, and some names that are pretty well known in the industry these days, um decide to I guess that probably lent himself to the exploration of that company, that prefab company. He's always, I guess, willing to take a risk, right?
Right.
In
Well,
within the
and
profession.
and not just that, but I mean, I think it's the thing that those folks, I had a feeling, you hadn't said it, but I had a feeling that you probably had some story about him. It's I mean, I had the good fortune of getting to work with Michael Rotundi a little bit, but it's I think, like you say, the Santa Monica School, the Southern California, kind of architects, in general, kind of parentheses, and then SCI-Arc itself, kind of the birth of that institution. I think it is things that architecture students and architects of a generation kind of have a connection to. And I think, like you said, the folks that sort of are in that sphere or in that sort of time frame or in that orbit, maybe orbit's a better word,
Mhm.
is that they did take risks, both with their practice, and sort of the direction for architecture, but also the direction for education. And I think that was sort of an interesting thing. I mean, that's what SCI-Arc was. It's sort of, it's birthing a whole new institution, which, eventually, late in his career, he gets recognized as sort of that, architecture education, kind of founder of sorts with, with others, but, and then leading that organization for a while. Um, he got the Topaz medallion, I believe. But it's, I think that those people are, like you say, prone to experiment, and to hear kind of your experience with that, sort of seeing, um, you know, prefab. As we don't even talk about prefab anymore.
Right.
Now we're just talking about 3D printing buildings.
Right. Yeah. I
Um,
mean, yeah, I think that's the thing is 20 years ago, it was the cutting edge thing, right? It was like, can we actually do this? And even before 20 years ago, but I
oh
mean,
yeah,
it was still something that like many people tried and it never, they never take off. And nowadays, I think, you know, to varying degrees, I mean, I'm working with prefab stuff and it's like, oh yeah, that's just because it's faster, right?
right, right.
Like
Yeah,
it's just
it's a
second
it's
nature now.
it's a it's more of a process, and
Yeah.
sort of distribution system, sort of, chain of goods kind of
Yeah.
situation, and just varying levels of technology that can be employed, for a particular project. We also had that sort of weird, I guess, in between sort of prefab and 3D printed. We had that sort of like everybody was fascinated with containers, but um, I
Yeah.
mean, they were
Some still are.
people were fascinated with containers before prefab too. But
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
I think it's, that one. That's just sort of that's a conversation for a different day.
Yeah. 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 So with the sketch, well, so first of all, so this is the Keeler residence, which so now it has burned. It's a loss, right?
It's a
We've
loss.
lost this building, and I found that article, and I sent it to you, and then you generated the sketch. So now we have this. I mean, the memory is now what we have left, right? Is essentially, not to get too esoteric about it, but the sketch, the aspect of the sketch captured on page, is now all what we can remember, photographs, things that, now you can't visit it, nearby, still under a threat, but I think it's not burned, is the Eames house,
Correct.
which, I mean, if anybody in architecture or school practice, whatever interest in architecture, even if you're not an architect, you're interested in architecture, you probably heard about the Eames house, um, the Eames residence and studio, if you want to get real formal about it. But a case study house. Was the Keeler house one of the case studies as well,
No,
or
no,
another?
no. The Keeler
Or
House, yeah, was like, was one of his later projects,
right, yeah,
actually. Um, but again, it's that sort of level of craft and sort of throwback modernism, um, that, looked at sort of mid-century design, and kind of brought it forward. Um, what was interesting was, like you said, the sketch really kind of captures sort of one vignette moment, of the building, and I think hopefully it does it justice. But it there were some things in the photo that you're really, really evident. I have not been to the house. I've only seen it I knew of his work, and then, sought out a good photograph, and this one sort of just jumped out at me. Interiors and exteriors, and there was a couple, sketch drawings of the house, from one of his archives. But the joinery of these sort of large timber members, to kind of create this, kind of layering of space, both as volume and mass, and interior and exterior, and deck and conditioned space, really was fascinating to me. The building's really designed in section. There's, it's it feels very California.
mhm.
It's, very of that place, and to see something like this, and know that it's gone, is heart wrenching. I mean, it's
I mean,
and
this
then
is something that's totally irreplaceable.
yeah,
There's also like Cappy also, in many of his houses. I mean, he was so good at creating these layers, as you said, in section. So there's a few steps and then go up to another level, and there's like hardly any railings in any of his houses, and you can't do that anymore, right? Like, there's no way you can actually build that and pass code the way he got away with some of these moves, as codes change, which, so that's not to to make it sound like, oh, he was doing things off the book. But the there was just, you just can't, there's no way to replicate this house. And that's the part. And it's not just this house,
It's
but anybody
anybody's.
in that
Yeah.
city that has lost a house in the fire. I mean, it's the same thing. Whether or not and that's what I brought it up in class yesterday morning. Well, in both classes, I just can't not say, not only because I spent time in LA, but as architects, I feel that we have to discuss these things, because this is what we do, right? We design these buildings for people. And if the building is lost, right, there's a connection that the people have to their build, especially a house. Commercial structures are a little bit different, but homes are, something that have such an emotional connection that, you know, take all the paperwork aside, that's gonna, you know, as you pointed out, the cost and expense of like how this thing is gonna get, restored in some fashion. But there's that intangible element of it that I I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I think a little differently, and
No, I mean
talk
it's
about
and
it. But
it's not even, it's not even romanticizing the comment. That romanticizing doesn't even sort of do justice what you're saying. It's that, as architects, we do have this connection to these places, and these buildings, um, as you're kind of imbuing meaning to this built form, and then the people who occupy it, add a whole nother layer of meaning to it as
Mhm.
well. So for us, as sort of, three or four or five or six layers, distant from this building, we're looking at it more as architects who admire the architect, admire the place, admire the skill, admire the time period, from an architecture history and theory perspective, right? But then, even the everyday, where it's any building, people kind of imbue their own connection to that building, that place,
Right.
and that sense of,
Landmark or
yeah,
location, orientation, all
and
those.
that sense of loss to those things uh, is crazy. It's hard. It's hard to put words to it.
Yeah.
As a preservationist, both of which I think, both of us sort of ascribe to that as well, is there are, difficult discussions about, losing a historic asset, and historic is sort of, I'm using that in the broadest sense of the term, where, historic from the standpoint of having meaning for someone, and I think that really anything has meaning at some point, right? But as a historic asset, a lot of preservation discussions are related to, maintenance of these buildings so that we don't lose them that way. That's usually where that sort of conversation lies. And it's now in the work that I do, especially, is it's not just about maintaining these buildings and or even giving them new life if somebody's trying to redevelop a property, but it's also finding a way to add the concept of resilience to
Yeah.
these buildings, because yes, they are, they're, you know, fire danger, weather, climate events, all those things really can start to affect these historic assets as well. Um, and so that's a real thing. That's a real discussion. That's a today discussion that no one has the answer to. That no one has figured out all the boxes to check, all the steps that we need to take. But I think that for you talking to architecture students who are, are entering this world, and potentially looking at what their future in practice, whatever that may be, whatever career path, or if even if it's just as patron of architecture, at the end of the day, these are all realities we all have to start to grapple with.
Yeah, thanks. I think I did mention resilient design. Can't not say that as well yesterday as a part of trends. Yesterday's lecture kind of was one of those that sets the tone for the rest of the semester, and so it's kind of the high level, like here's where we're heading, you know. And yeah, so I didn't forget to plant that seed as well. So so yeah, it'd be fun to, again, like I said, it's like you don't really hear Ray Cappy's name and see a lot of his buildings come up as very often as say other architects. And I mean, it would be great fun to kind of revisit some of his other buildings. I think he just had such a creative uh, way to not just think and plan, but in section, and the three dimensionality of his projects. But so what I did too, I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I wanted to. So you see this sort of line, this like thread that's leading off to the side here, is um, like I mentioned last week. I wanted to talk about I wanted to continue certain uh, test cases or continuation of just the development of AI and visualization. And so I have um, an access to this software called Vizcom, Vizcom, which is um, an AI, a generative AI visualization tool. But you can, I mean, I'm sure others can do this too. But basically, I pulled in your sketch and then put attached a prompt to it, and then ask, or basically move the levers and dials to like create a variety of different outcomes. So the prompt was, because I thought the interesting angle that I could take was this is that it's a sketch of a renowned architect's iconic house, um, recently burned down in a fire, wanted to pay homage to the architect and the house. And so it's all about strong horizontal lines and cantilevering forms and raw wood and glass. So I thought, I don't know, to throw in some of these aspects. And I think one thing is I'll probably need to work on my prompt uh, engineering, for lack of a better term, but what people use. So I ran through a variety. I didn't pull it all in here, right? But I did run through. I just grabbed three of their, let's say, their sort of standard uh, texture, like their baseline sort of graphic uh, language, right? The color palette and so on. Like I didn't really mess with that. And so on the left,
It's like a breezy Starbucks kind of color palette.
yeah, and so there's three images, three iterations, and what I did differently was that the same prompt, but I put three different weights on your sketch, right? So the left is 25% weighted to your sketch, the middle is 50-50, and the right is 75% to your sketch, right? So if you see if the most obvious is the very left one has like this floating. It looks the
The
least
left
like
one
the
looks
house.
the left one looks like they're burning the house.
Yeah,
Like AI, like the AI overlord,
yeah, it does look a little.
like really, they just, I mean, they burned it. They pulled off a piece. They built a model. I mean,
There actually was
they gave
another
up. They gave
iteration
up
with
on the
more color
coffee.
that
Yeah,
literally looks like flames, and I was like, oh no, that's not
that's
that's not what I wanted.
oh,
Um, What the what I liked about this one though is that it sort of has this floating thing, and then so then maybe this could turn into another exploration down the road where we can uh, you know kind of push things further. But so then the middle one I think is um, kind of nice because it deviates from your hand style, this your or the sketching methods that you typically deploy, and kind of applies a, a, a layered effect to it. And then the one on the right is not your hand, although they did an interesting job trying to pick up on your some of your techniques. I would say this is like maybe 14-year-old Jamie versus the Jamie
I,
of today.
well, I appreciate that. I thought maybe you're trying to replace me. So,
Although they did pick up on your little dappled tree.
mm-hmm,
It
mm-hmm.
replaced it. No, AI can't. AI, I'm not in the camp of AI replaces people.
Okay,
You
okay.
still
Just
need the
making.
expert in the room. I mean, well, first of all, they didn't figure out how to make a Denny's mug.
No, no.
But although you didn't, I guess you weren't using the Denny's mug today either. So, and they
But
don't have the
what's
reflection
interesting too is
as you have.
in the middle one, and this is the thing I think that's always sort of fascinating, and others will often talk about this with AI when Viscom or others. I if you go back to an earlier episode, I dabbled with one of these as well and sort of had this similar kind of commentary. It's like, oh, hey, the 10%, the 25, the 50. It's like where are we in terms of fidelity to the
Hmm.
actual original image versus not. But what I always find interesting is the things that it decides to replace, in addition to the actual subject matter, like the primary subject matter, like the things around it, the entourage, in effect.
Hmm.
So the entourage, for those who've never looked at any of the Instagram posts that I ever do about these sketches, the entourage is the implement, the sketchbook, sometimes at some funky angle, and the coffee cup. Like those are the three things that are always there. In the middle sketch, like it looks, I mean, this could be one of my sketches, kind of the way it's sort of rendered a little bit, but it's what I'm trying to figure out is like the implements that they create. I don't even know what those implements are. Like it's like
Well, if you look at real close, it at the bottom it looks like there's two pencils.
right.
On the top, there's
There's like
three,
three,
but
and
they're
like
like
one of
pen
them,
caps.
yeah, and like the one looks like a like partly a chopstick or something like that. I'm not so very
Yeah,
entertaining,
and then
but
if we go back to your original, right? I mean,
it's a
the
pen.
pilot pen is
It's
right there. Although there's some examples. Let's see. The third one has a more believable pen.
right.
It does look like it has an eraser, but that's fine.
That's okay.
So anyway, I just wanted to share, not necessarily trying to compare or um, equate all the sketch to the AI things. I think there's, you know, but it just thought of an opportunity that like it interpret what I meant about being burned down in a fire, and how do you celebrate? I guess that was my intention, was to
Right.
sort of create a celebration of it.
Yeah. Does it understand the word homage that you used as opposed to celebrate? Like I think if you were to use the word celebrate, you probably got fireworks or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
it's like it's weird, how it's how it's learning, to read the situation or the nuance that you're creating. And so I think that we've talked always about this, is that there's a level of critique to this, and I'm glad that you sort of shared it in this way, where there's fidelity that you're sort of manipulating, in each of the sketches, each of the results, right? um, because I think the thing I've seen in looking at sort of student work of late, that tries to use AI as a way in their process, which I think is really clever, honestly, as sort of a studio way, is inserting AI at a certain point in the process to generate additional ideas,
Mhm.
related to the work that you're already doing. I think that's interesting. You and I've talked about that. If I could have sort of an artificial collaborator at times to push my ideas forward, why would I not like that? I mean,
Mhm.
why But I have to again go back and pick it back up, critique it, and then move it forward again. And oftentimes that second moving forward is really more I'm doing the lift at that point, right? Um, so the agency to everything is back to me, right? The deciding, yes, the prompt that I gave it or the work that I was doing, yeah, I hadn't fully fleshed out that idea either. It doesn't know what I'm trying to accomplish, so the work that it's sort of generating there is kind of like it's a little iffy. I think that that's the thing that is critical for a maturing designer to realize is that there are going to be instances where you do have that aha moment by seeing a visual that something like that creates. It's going to spark something in you that you can then pick up and move forward. There's also going to be a lot of hot garbage that gets created,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
No pun intended, but it's like and I think that that's just like, oh wow, that it's like when you sketch something yourself and go, that was a really dumb idea, but I'm glad I got it on the page,
Yeah.
right?
And move
and
on.
and
Yeah.
move on. And so if AI is doing the same thing, fine, let it, fine. Um, but we've said it in a previous episode. I'm going to say it again here: is I want to be in that seminar session where somebody walks us through that process and talks about that level of critique to the AI generated form, and then what are the steps that they're doing in terms of moving from that point forward. That to me, that little nuance in there is the part that no one ever talks about, to the level that somebody else can relate to it and can internalize it to their process. Everything is like, it's at that point it's like, well, we did this and this and then we generated some things, and then we took the next pass at it and did, okay, wait, whoa, go, roll the tape back. It generated some things, and then you said, and then we took another pass at, what was the part in between there that you did?
Right. Right.
Like,
Right.
that's the part I want somebody to spend an hour and talk about,
Yeah.
because I think that that's where the real learning goes
Yeah.
for all of us. And it's not to say that they don't have really good, they don't know what that is. It's just, I don't think that people are talking about it in a way that is really, really where you have tangible things to further that conversation. And that's the part that I think would be super valuable for so many folks, myself included. I'm going to learn so much from somebody else's experience with this kind of process and how their instincts are applied to that little segment of time. Like, I don't need to know how you generated your design at the beginning. I don't care. I really don't. You know, I want to know that part in the middle,
Yeah.
because that to me is the part that I can imagine what I would do. I can tell you what I've done in the past on it. Um, and I can tell you where the gaps in my knowledge are in that little frame. But I want to hear what other folks' experiences are with it, including yours. I mean, as you look at those three images, what were the things that were your kind of quick takeaways? And the surprise moments.
Yeah. I mean, I think, in a nutshell, it, and I mentioned this already, is that it said, well, none of them really had the same character that your sketch, the I don't want to use the word style, but I want to say, they didn't have the same life to them that the sketch did. And that's when I started questioning the prompt. Is the prompt clear enough, right? Because
Right.
essentially AI is trying to guess what we really want, but we're not I'm not articulating it to a degree where it can sort of concisely arrive at the solution. So that's like I totally agree with you. The learning, the brain work really is happening in that space between iteration. Then because the computer is not really doing brain work. Computer is just programmed to sort of connect its own dots based on what you're trying to ask. So it's just sort of filtering information into an outcome where and so the human is the one that's thinking like, oh, okay, well, if I take it in this direction or that direction, am I going to get closer to what I want? So there's a curatorial component that then is really the scrutiny, right? Like it's very nuanced and sort of packed into that point in between generations.
Well, and I think that it's I'm not trying to like oversimplify or overemphasize my interest in this. It's just that um, there are definitely folks that I follow that I'm looking at their work, and they are in some respects exclusively working with AI modeling systems to generate architectural environments, and I think it's fascinating stuff. And it's clear that they have a very unique and refined process where they're using prompts and whatever kind of library of um, learned tools for their AI, because that's part of it too. Is your AI has to, it has to learn enough to be able to kind of sample the
Yeah.
right information to generate what you're hoping that it can do, right? But then it's that give and take. That's that interplay between the two, between the artificial, between the process that it's going through and the process that you're going through as a designer. That interplay is the part that I really really want to hear more about, because I can look at somebody's product and admire it, and I can even see earlier iterations of it and admire those. And I can make guesses about things that somebody may or may not be doing to generate that final product. But what I want to hear is the human being who is part of that, or the team that's part of that, talk about it. Talk about that process. That to me would be incredibly valuable. And if there are, you know, folks who are doing that, and or have done that,
Mhm.
to the level that I'm talking about. I mean, yeah, I mean, I can type out a list of 10 different folks that I know are working in this realm and are doing really interesting things and can talk about the nuances of certain software over another, and you know certain parameters to set up and other things, and that may be all applicable to what I'm talking about to some degree. But I think there's also another part of it, because there's going to come a point where the students that you're working with and designers that are maturing now, and designers who haven't even entered the frame, you know are this is the world that they're going to inherit too. And I think that I want to understand it better myself. I'm not stopping anytime soon. You're not.
Right.
And
Right.
and I think that there's stuff that I'm seeing, like I'm seeing students create a really flashy, for instance, students, even some professionals, creating a really flashy AI image, and um, but then when you look at it, you're like, you know, that kind of doesn't work. You know, there's, even with what you're saying you want it to do, there's pieces of it that's like, like, why wouldn't you, kind of nod to this or that? Like, do you know that there's an architect who's already done that 30 years ago? Maybe in a
Yeah.
slightly different form. That you can tell it's borrowing from that image library to influence your work. Do you know that? Like, if you know that, that's one thing. But if you don't know that, that's kind of a different thing, right? That's a
Yeah.
different problem to
Yeah.
have.
Yeah. 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 Well, we will have to get Sarah, one of my faculty colleagues. She's actually running a grad studio this semester, um, developing housing and AI into a infill site in Detroit. I think adaptive reuse. So I think she's going to be digging at that problem, that point that you're talking about, right? I mean, I think that's where the meat of the semester is going to be in, right? I mean, because the generation of the imagery will be quick, but then she's going to, force that conversation.
Right.
So
That and
I'll
that's
keep in
great.
touch with her, and then we'll have to kind of scoop her in here and have that conversation. I
And
think
then we
that will
can
be
be
fun.
added to her syllabus too.
Yeah, I know. I should have reminded her. So yeah, well yeah, there's a lot of interesting kind of points that I didn't expect to kind of ping pong back and forth. So thanks. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, I got nothing else, man.
It's a new year
New
and
year.
new topics. I mean, I thought just to end on this thought for you. I thought end on this thought that you were going to make the introduction of, like, I took your sketch and then I ripped it up and then I rebuilt it in AI, just like a Kintsugi kind of, or Kintsugai kind of pitch. And like you were, kind of leaning into that, you know,
Oh
but
well,
I wasn't sure. I
we'll
wasn't
be
sure. Yeah.
well. Kintsugi will be back
Okay.
at some point.
Cheers.
Thanks.